All right, the results are in. And I'm not the happiest of campers, I'm not gonna lie. It took me a little while to record this one. I slept on it, I had to. Probably the craziest draft lottery results we've seen in a while. Being funny enough, last year we had a 10th seed playing team win it. It still was more interesting this year. So, as I mentioned, I slept on it, and I had to let some of those initial feelings die down so I could really get a good picture on what's going on with this lottery and how I feel about it, right? So first, gotta start off by saying congrats to the Mavs for winning the draft lottery, right? Uniquely a week ago, I created a Coop video and how the 13 teams that are vying for him, how he would fit on each one of those 13 teams, and for the first pick. And funny enough, it's kind of crazy actually too, that the teams in that top three, which are Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia, were all teams that I graded with futures of an A plus, and B plus respectively, so considering even Coop on their team. So now you have three teams that are pretty stacked that will have, we've been talking about it for a little while. This is a deep draft, and they could potentially be leaving with a generational talent at this spot right here. More and more I feel that the NBA is more about the embarrassment of riches, right? And the haves and have-nots, and clearly this is, a good way to show that, right? If there couldn't be more of a epitome of that than this top three, right? But if we go a little bit further, we just look at even these top four teams. I have them on the screen here as I'm speaking about it. Is one thing we know is that the top four give you a lot of flexibility. It allows you it's going to allow these four teams, now adding Charlotte into this conversation, it allows them to shift the direction into what they would like to do, right? Ultimately, I know people at Charlotte probably aren't very happy either, being that they had another year of tanking, and it didn't bode well in the sense of getting that generational guy at the top, but they still have a very good spot in this top four pick. And that's why I say you add them into the conversation and you say this allows them to shift the direction to what they would like. But I do, for some reason, I don't know why, and I know reports are already saying that there's not going to be, but I expect movement in this first four, but I'm just not sure who it will be per se. But if I was a betting man, my money is on Charlotte may have a guy in mind. If they don't see that guy at 4, they may be willing to part with that pick. That's what my feeling is giving me at this time. I also, interestingly enough, the combine is going on right now. There's already been scoring and reports, some of a negative and positive account. But one thing that I think there is a world that may happen, and I don't know if it's just there's just a dark cloud that they're hanging around this guy, but it just seems like Ace Bailey is gonna slide. I don't know why. There's nothing indicating it precisely, but it just feels like he's ripe for that, right? He's giving me a lot of comps he's been getting recently is Barry Smith Jr. So with that in mind, I wonder if teams in this top three, like I said, top three, top four range, are they willing to take a chance on a player that looks like that? Are they willing to move this pick potentially for some assets? I think that if it does happen, teams in asset talent accumulation stages might be aggressive to give in, right? Like to give in right here. And I'm looking at teams like the Bulls, I'm looking at teams like the Blazers, I'm looking at teams like Brooklyn to try to get in on if they could move up potentially. They wanted to get up there to get to where wherever Ace may slide, but I don't know. Something's just giving me the idea that he might slide. A guy I liked a lot during this season in college basketball was Tre Johnson, and Tre Johnson's what he showed in Texas this past year, and then what he's showing even in the combine a little bit, gives me the belief that he might be the guy that might move up if Ace does slide down. And it bodes well. You look at his size, you look at his confidence in his shot, you look at the confidence of him as just a player, and it just bodes well to him potentially making that move up. Is there a guarantee of that? Obviously not. Teams evaluate players differently, and they have set rules and reasons and why they choose a player, right? They may want to take him in for a workout. They might see something that says, hey, you know what? This is why I want to keep Tre Johnson. But one thing that I will say, why I got Tre Johnson moving up beyond just that, I just think as a stability side of it, you can tell what Tre Johnson's floor is going to look like, right, in the league, right? Whereas Ace Bailey's upside is built on a limitless ceiling, right? And when you look at the teams that we're talking about in this top 4, even if you look at the top 7, you have a couple teams, like you have the Pelicans in the top 7 that is a team that could be a playoff team as soon as next year, right? So when you have 4 teams in my mind, I still think Hornets are a little bit ways away from playoff contention, but they're getting closer, right, with a pick like this, right? But you have 4 teams in this top 7 that could be vying for a playoff position. I think that they would want to go after a guy with a higher floor at this point and try to see what they could get out of development. But I could see like Utah, Charlotte, Washington thinking and feeling very confident and, hey, you know what? I want to take a shot at Ace and see what we could bring. But I also could say, hey, like, where is the fit? Where is the specific fit? Are they worried about fit at this moment? And I would say, for me personally, the Wizards and Jazz do not. I don't think they care about if there's a fit. They're just here for talent accumulation, and if they're able to do that, they're going to do that here. So I move on. I honestly now, because we're talking about this top 7 area of the draft, you got to feel for some of the small and mid-market teams that are in this position. You know, free agency was never viable for most of these teams, if we're being honest. And then you see how these, we see how this is setting like hopelessness in their fan bases, right? So I really do feel for teams like the Wizards, the Jazz, even the Hornets at this point, because I believe it was Sam Presti that asked and begged this question about if we're taking away or we're curving and we're leveling out the odds, what does that do for small to medium-sized markets with talent accumulation in this sense, right? The free agency was never a viable option for them. And then trade is not always the easiest in those situations. But now it's becoming glaringly clear that even the draft might not even be that option, because you could spend the whole season. We're talking about the 1, 2, and 3 all respectively sliding, right? And 4 actually too, all respectively sliding. The only shift in there is that Charlotte jumped up, leaped past the Jazz and the Wizards to 4, but from there going on, it's Charlotte, it's Charlotte, it's the Jazz, it's the Wizards, and then it's the Pelicans. So I really do feel for these guys. So I move on, but still staying in this top 7, I have another thing to say, and then I'll scroll a little bit just to speak to another aspect about this draft. Is you gotta feel that San Antonio is in for a real. They're in a position to win the draft, in my mind. It'll be important to monitor how this all plays out for the Spurs in this next upcoming weeks. Reports are already starting to say that they're not shopping the second pick again. Smoke and mirrors. I always think they are smoke and mirrors. If the right offer is presented to them, I do believe that they would jump on it. I would jump on it, right? A lot of talk around Giannis is the conversation, but let's think about this realistically. There's other names that we've heard at this place, right? And now it seems like it kind of died down because we're hearing conversation about Giannis. But what if Devin Booker is open, right? What if Devin Booker is shopped by the Suns? I think that would be quiet, and I think the perfect team to jump on that would be a team like the Spurs. Bringing in Devin Booker over Giannis, in my mind, just fits the timeline a little bit better. I would still love if they decided to go with Dylan Harper, because I just think the upside on Dylan's game, I will say this now, you'll always remember I said this, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but if I'm right, I'm just saying it now, is I do think in a league that prioritizes guards in this way and superstardom, I think that there's a world where Dylan Harper gets to being that type of superstar level, all NBA level player before Coop gets that, because of the limitations naturally that would be placed on Coop's game, being that he won't be the focal point, sadly, of the Mavericks system as of this moment. And maybe even Dylan, in that same respect, would not be, but with the ball in his hands, it will be a lot easier for him than it would be for Coop. So I'm not saying that Coop's going to be a bust. Best comp for that is what we saw with Zion and what we saw with Ja Morant. We saw how Ja Morant was placed in a situation where he was given the opportunity to cook. And we've seen how it's played out. Obviously some good and some bad, but ultimately I think that it's safe to say, like, when you look at how their careers have played out, Ja has shown more All-NBA potential than Zion has in his career. Now I move on. Another big part of this early part of the lottery is that the Sixers got to keep their pick. This means that OKC's protection does not convey this year, and it is moved off to next year, which has protection of top 4 protection. I'm assuming that next year, with the talent that they bring in, Jared McKinnon coming back healthy, Embiid, whatever you could get out of him, Paul George, whatever you could get out of him, Quentin Grimes, whatever you could get out of him, and then Tyrese Maxey, I would like to believe that it would convey next year. This allows Sixers to fulfill their next obligation then, which is to the Brooklyn Nets, which is top 8 protection. So moving on from that, I guess the biggest question, and it's kind of funny to be that he was their representative for the Pelicans. The real question is, do the Pelicans decide to trade or to keep Zion? And that is the burning question, right? Although you could get a game changer still, in my mind, at 7 in a very deep draft, but you don't know if you're 100% going to. It's the difference of getting a Coop or getting a Derek Queen or getting a Kaman Malawach, right? So I imagine there's a world this pick is shopped to a team. Hey, honestly, look at a team like the Kings wanting to get back into this draft because they also understand how deep this draft is, and getting maybe like a guy like Kaman Malawach onto their team at this time could bode well for them. So again, I move into the next question, and I talked about it lightly a little bit, is there's some teams like my team that is a little salty that they missed out at the top of this draft, right? So I do wonder if the Wizards or the Nets package their picks, being that they have multiple, to move up to that spot that I've spoken about earlier, the 4th spot, right? There are only 2 teams with multiple picks in the lottery, ranging in the middle of the pack, mid-range picks area. So I wonder if this entices a team like the Hornets to potentially add, go for a 2-for-1 situation. And then lastly, I tried not to, and I talked about it in my last video, not go on the rig angle of this, but man, I just can't. It's hard to not say. I don't believe I personally do not believe in the rig aspect of it, but if there was ever a time to account for where they could make me question the validity around the notion, it would be this year. It would be hard to not say it wasn't this year, because when you hear a team that was positioned at the 11th best odds to win the lottery, it's happened. I mentioned it in my last video that it's happened with the Orlando Magic in 1993, where they traded, ironically, and I mentioned that too, is that they traded that pick, which was Chris Webber, ironically a similar position where Coop Flag plays in, right? They moved that pick to then go and get Penny Hardaway, right? So I sit here and I'm thinking about it, and I look at it, and there's that one angle of it, and then the second angle of the Mavs make the most questionable trade in the world, and the benefits of it is they see a number 1 pick that very next year, and they weren't a team that even got a bunch of picks back from the Lakers in that trade. So it is interesting. I still don't think that there's much validity to the NBA rigging it. It really is purely chance. But if there was ever a time to question that, it would be now. But I'll just give again just one more rundown of all the teams that are picking here, and then we'll close it out. So as I mentioned, at 14, you have San Antonio picking. I don't know. I do think that this is a pick that we could see San Antonio moving potentially, because they may stick here, but for me, I think that they might move this one. You have 13 Atlanta getting this via Sacramento, and then you have Chicago Bulls slotted at 12. I feel so bad for the Bulls, another team that is constantly stuck in play-in purgatory. And then you have Portland Trailblazers, another team that I wish got a bit of a bump, but you are where you are in the draft. So, but they have a bright future in my mind as well. Then you have the Houston Rockets, who slid as well. I believe it's 1 spot back that they slid in this pick that they received via the Phoenix Suns. And then you have Toronto at 9, Brooklyn at 8, New Orleans at 7, the Wizards at 6, Utah at 5, and then Charlotte at 4, Sixers at 3, Spurs at 2, and with the number 1 pick, Dallas Mavericks. I'd love to hear how you guys feel in the comments, what you feel about all of the picks I was deciding. Would you, if you were the Dallas Mavericks, would you move that pick? Would you potentially take a look at the Giannis conversation? Is there another player that you're targeting here that you would get into the conversation? If you were San Antonio, Or if you're a San Antonio fan, would you keep this pick, or would you move it on to get a player like a Giannis, or someone that I brought up like Devin Booker at this position? Or lastly, if you're a Sixers fan, well, you know you're one of the luckiest fans in the world out there right now. So what do? Do you keep this pick, or do you try to get a win now, ready now type of player to move on with? But yeah, best of luck to all the teams selecting on June 25th. And this is Jeff from Step Back Jays. Peace.